Hey folks, welcome to this week's Texas Count Census Update. We just went live on Facebook and we also just opened up the webinar. So we're going to give it a minute or so before we get started. But again, thank you so much for joining us today and we'll get started soon. All right, folks, we are going to go ahead and get started. Again, welcome to this week's Texas Count Census Update. Today is Monday, August 17th. Today, I am joined by two fabulous census champions, one being Dr. Lila Valencia from the Texas Demographic Center, and then Ms. Genesis Sanchez from the NALEO Educational Fund, and I am Katie Martin Lightfoot from Every Texan. Similarly to what we do every week, if you've joined us, you know kind of what the rundown is, but of course we like to start things off with a big welcome to everyone. So again, welcome folks. Thank you for continuing to engage in census outreach efforts, and we hope that you and your families are safe and well during this time. Then I will pass it over to Genesis to give us some 2020 census updates, and then Lila will take us through the data and we'll round things off with some Get Out the Count efforts. At any time, please feel free to use the chat box or the Q&A box if you have any questions, comments, concerns. For my friends joining in on Facebook, feel free to use the comment section of Facebook as well. We'll be monitoring that. So if you do have any questions you'd like to ask, feel free to pop them in there. But without further ado, we are going to go ahead and get started. So I'd like to pass this over to Genesis now.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us, and also echoing Katie's sentiments. I hope everybody's doing well and taking care of themselves during this time. Next slide, please. So I'm going to be repeating some of what I repeated our last call, simply because some of the updates that we have are more to do with confirming the information we previously shared. And also, we're still waiting to hear on some of these things that are kind of happening in the field. So do have some patience with us as we also try to figure this out. But the Bureau released a press release on August 14th that simply stated some of what we had previously shared, which was that the Bureau is going to follow up with some households via phone, that enumerators will leave a notice of visit at non-responding doors. And this notice of visit is linked here. They shared a copy of it. It looks very similar to the actual paper questionnaire in that it's printed on blue or green paper and will be in English or Spanish. And again, the idea behind these are to kind of let someone know, like, hey, we came to visit, we knocked on a door, but you didn't respond, so here's your additional information. Previous Census Bureau tests done in other sites have shown that these are pretty successful, right? Because when someone comes to the door and leaves you a reminder of something, you tend to recognize like the importance of it. So hopefully, we see a lot more of these. And again, you can click through here and see them yourself. There will be an additional paper questionnaire that's mailed in late August or early September. We are trying to determine whether this is going to be to all non-responding households or just low responding census tracts. That remains to be seen. And so once we have confirmation of that, we'll definitely share. The Bureau is also going to be sending emails. And so this is here, I just brought in the email that they're going to be sending from, in case folks are getting emails and they're not sure whether or not, you know, it's a scam or something similar. So just know again that for the most part, a good rule of thumb is when you're curious about whether something is coming from the Census Bureau or not, if you Google the thing that it's coming from, whether it's a phone number, whether it's the email, etc., you should be linked back to a census.gov website. So for instance, one of my friend's moms recently got a call to verify the information on her Census Bureau form, and they left a voicemail with a number that she would call. She thought it was a scam. She asked me about it. I Googled it, and it was very clear that it was actually from the Census Bureau because the number was confirmed as part of a census.gov website. And so that's a very easy way for us to check on those things in case someone does ask. Next slide. As we talked about in our last call, we can confirm that census door knocking has been cut short, as you all know, and as we understand the urgency around getting this work done is even more pressing now, as we anticipate that our hardest to count communities are going to have an even more difficult time getting counted. And so some of the operational adjustments are listed here. This process is pretty unprecedented, so we're still learning exactly how the Bureau is going to adjust a lot of their operations in order to get to those folks that need to be reached. Most, NERFU typically lasts about 2 months, and now that it's being kind of condensed into about 6 weeks, this is going to be really, really difficult. And we, again, if you have the capacity or decision making to take any action around asking Congress to extend the statutory deadlines for both reporting apportionment and redistricting data, then please do so. This is going to be really important. We need as much time as we can so we don't have to overly rely on administrative data, which is not as good. And again, the best way for people to share their information is through self-response. Next slide. So some things that I just wanted to bring up and to share about NERFU. I know I've been talking about this, but some of the things that are coming up and that we want to remind folks of is that if a census taker does come to the door, there's criteria and they have rules around what they're expected to do. So for instance, census takers will knock from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. in whatever local time they're in. So anytime before then or after that is not allowed. They have an ID badge with their name, their photograph, a Department of Commerce watermark, and an expiration date. And they should show this from the beginning. Like that process is pretty standard. They should be wearing a mask. They are being offered PPE. They have a census bag and then a Census Bureau issued electronic device. So this could be an iPad or an iPhone, but they should have some type of device on them. If they do visit or they go to the home of your neighbor, landlord, or other proxy, they cannot ask to enter the home. They should not either ask, and nor should our community members allow them to come into the home, especially during this time. They can only ask questions that are on the questionnaire, and they will never ask for or request additional documentation. And another thing I didn't note here, but we also want to be mindful that they need to go through their entire script. So if any of you have had someone come to their door, or if you've called in to do your response, they should say their script verbatim. And so I'm seeing comments about some of the Bureau specialists, the enumerators, so I'm going to come back to that as well. Next slide, please. So there's a lot of resources being built, and I know Katie's going to talk about this a little bit as well later on. But if you have to confirm the identity of a census taker, this is the number for the Dallas Regional Census Center. So anybody in Texas, any worker in Texas can be identified through this number. The Bureau produced a press kit and B-roll of enumerators. So if you want to share those with your community members or as part of any kind of video work that you're doing around NERFU, please feel free to use that. As I mentioned before, Census Count has organized a webinar and slides that review NERFU. At this point, I'm not sure how updated they are, just simply because there are some internal changes, but again, we'll continue to share the most updated information as possible. And then CUNY's Hard to Count map organizers also shared some notes on NERFU and just what they anticipate during this time. Community Action Partnership created 2 very helpful graphics. One of them is shown here in Spanish, but I know that, again, Katie has some things to share as well. We created a NERFU fact sheet that we're also updating and hope to publish any updates within the week. And then as far as, I know there's a comment here in the chat. Census employees have been in my neighborhood already. The vehicles did not have any identifying notice, but they did have badges and census bags. So this is kind of a great thing to flag. But other additional things, please know that you can report them to us, and we are asking folks, in particular, at least for Naleo Educational Fund, if you're seeing anything, if you're hearing anything that is concerning, whether it's that enumerators are not being properly trained, whether they're not wearing PPE, whether they're asking questions outside of the questionnaire, things like that, please do flag it for us. This is not a promise that we can take any action, but rather that we want to accumulate any issues and report them to the Government Accountability Office so that we can also continue to petition for a longer census. And in this way, we can show, right, that a shortened NERFU leads to a lot of mistakes. And if you don't want to talk to me, that's cool. We also have our bilingual hotline, where the number is listed here. And so you can also call our bilingual hotline and we'll take any reports as well. As many of you know, this is kind of the time to keep it right. Like, many of us can't be out in the field, so we got to keep an eye on and continue to support the Census Bureau, but knowing, right, that mistakes are going to be made and that we just want to have as accurate and as fair of a census count as possible. Next slide. So I just wanted to also very quickly cover the Hispanic origin and race questions, simply because we're also getting a lot of questions about this, and this tends to be the piece of the census questionnaire that kind of always gets everybody stuck. Just as a reminder, it's a 2-part question, and the first one says, is this person of Hispanic, Latino, or Spanish origin? And here are the options. And then the second part of the question says, what is this person's race? Next slide. So the Bureau asks these questions as part of, collecting data that will guide and inform public and private sector decision making. It also it ensures fair and representative of reapportionment and redistricting, and then it kind of helps reveal any of those disparities that are rooted in historic discrimination so that we can fight and eliminate those disparities in the future. The information cannot be used against folks in terms of the targeting individuals for immigration enforcement or enforcement of other laws, things like housing codes, receipt of public benefits, or arrest warrants. This is in line with Title 13. That information cannot be shared with other agencies and in order to be used against a person or any individual or community. And then, as many of you know, the Office of Management and Budget, the OMB, is the one that determines the standards for federal data collection. And so this question has been in discussion from 2014 to 2018. It takes a long time for these questions to appear on a census. For instance, the MENA category, the Middle Eastern and North African category, was something that was up for discussion as part of inclusion in the census this year, but unfortunately was not made a part of. So it takes a lot of advocacy, a lot of work to get to this point. Next slide, please. So one thing that folks need to know is, and again, it's a little confusing and it can be confusing for community members, so I'll kind of get to the meat of it soon. But the census can only report one Hispanic origin. So that means that, a person may say, well, I'm Mexican and Salvadorian, but the Bureau is only going to report one. In addition, some Latinos consider themselves a part of many races, and they'll check as many race categories as they want to identify with. Whereas some Latinos don't consider themselves as part of any of the official race categories, and they can mark some other race and write in what they want. You can indicate more than one race, as many as you identify with. And then if you identify as Latino, Hispanic, we want to promote that folks should answer both. The reason for this is, next slide, please. If you don't check off some other race or if you don't check off some other race or you don't check off a race, the Bureau will assign you to one of those races. And typically it's going to be white, simply because that's kind of what the historical designation has been. There are new options now. So folks who are Afro-Latino, for example, can indicate their specific identification. But again, this is a really imperfect part of the form. It's very contentious. It has been up for debate for a while, but I just wanted to bring it back up because I know some folks have questions about it. It's the thing that stumps all of us. I know it stumps me. I know Katie earlier shared a kind of an anecdote about something that happened to her mom. And so for us, we know that it's a question that gets raised. Do know, again, that bilingual hotline that I shared earlier, you can share that hotline with anybody you'd like. If someone has a question that you don't know how to answer, you can send them to us and we'll talk to them and try to get them the best answer as possible. But at the end of the day, do just suggest to folks that they pick the identity that they most self-identify with. The Census Bureau supports self-identification. This is how we get a more accurate and complete picture of what our demographics look like, of what we look like, especially here in Texas. And so folks should feel, empowered to choose whatever it may be. And it may mean that, they may see white, and they may, especially for Latinos, for example, they may see white, especially because in schools, a lot of that designation happens in a very, uniform way. But know that there's also some other race. If people say, well, I don't really see myself here, know that they can include themselves as part of some other race. Folks do have options. And if there's any continued conversations or questions about this, please know that I'm here as a resource. I think, next slide, please. I think with that, I think Berta shared, hi Berta. So Berta sent an email with some concerning updates from last week about the Bureau operations. So Berta, we've heard some of this as well. Hi. We're waiting to hear confirmation from the Census Bureau directly before we publish any of the updates. And again, this is why it's really important for us to kind of act as watchdogs in this moment, in particular to make sure that, if someone in your community is saying like, well, someone came to the door and they did something and I thought it was a little weird, please know that we do want to continue to report and highlight some of these issues that are coming up. We don't want to create a lot of fear, more fear than there already is, but we do want to take action, right? Especially in thinking about how we want to report things and how we want to keep track of things as we continue to kind of create advocacy around the issue. So do know, again, that you have a resource in us. And if you have any issues or concerns, please know you can raise them to me. And we will try to figure out how we can be as supportive as possible. And with that, I think I'm going to hand it back to Katie. Thanks, everybody.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Genesis, for walking us through the operations, but also reminding us how folks can respond to the origin question as well as the race question on the census questionnaire. And of course, if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, do know that you can use the chat and Q&A box. And then for my friends on Facebook, know that you can use the comment section as well. Now, I'm very excited to pass it over to Dr. Lila Valencia, who is going to walk us through the data. So welcome, Lila.
Thanks, Katie. Hello, everyone. Hope you're all doing really well this week. I'm going to go ahead and take you through the response rate tools that we've been looking at for the last few weeks. So all of the information I'm sharing is from the Census Bureau self-response map, their Tableau dashboard with the rankings, the CUNY hard to count map, and then our map and dashboard as well. You can there's links to all of these, so you can use those links to look at the tools in more detail after this update. Next slide, please. So good news, Texas response rate keeps up, ticking up every day. We are increasing at about 0.1 percentage points a day. This may sound relatively small, but you'll recall that there was a period for about a couple of months where Texas was increasing by like 0.1 percentage points per week. So this is a bit of an improvement. We've seen an uptick, and it's not affected our ranking yet. We are still at 39th, We are about, the next state above us, I believe, is Georgia, and they are at 59.2% response rate. Texas right now is at 58.7%. So we're still trailing the national response rate, but this time it's just beneath 5 percentage points. So we've actually been able to close that gap a tiny little bit. There's an estimated 94 million households across the country that have responded, and 7.1 million households are here in Texas. So that means there's about 5 million households left for enumerators and people to self-respond from. Next slide, please. So here is another view from the same map dashboard from the Census Bureau, and this is the county view. And so what I'm showing you here is that we have more and more areas of the state that are in blue, which means that their response rates are over 50%. And so that's really good news. Texas now has 107 counties of the 254 that have a 50% and over response rate. There's a few counties that are really, really close to this milestone, and I'll be watching them this week to see if they're able to make that milestone. And those counties are Hutchinson, Swisher, Cherokee, Armstrong, and Bosque. Most of these are in more sparsely populated parts of the state, but there's still significant populations in the state, and really looking forward for them to reach that milestone. Next slide, please. Here is the ranking. So as you can see, Georgia, like I mentioned, is at 59.2 at 38th, and Texas is at 39th at 58.7. Again, you can see the 7.1 million households that we've enumerated so far. And then when we do the, when we select for Texas, the bottom part of the dashboard shows the rankings for the counties and for the cities. And so we can see Mountain City is still in the lead and has actually increased their lead a little bit in terms of the response rates for the cities, and Fort Bend is in the lead for the counties. We have about 33 cities that have reached that 2010 milestone. And this is, of course, out of about 1,200 cities in Texas. So it's great that we're being able to reach those milestones, but we need more cities to be able to do that, in more counties. Right now, really close to meeting the 2010 milestone are cities of Jolly, New Hope, Hill Country Village, Prosper, Queen City, and Missouri City. They're like, you know, within a fraction of a percentage point to reaching that milestone. So we'll be keeping an eye on them, and I'll report next time we meet to see where they are. Next slide, please. And then I also wanted to share that the CUNY Hard to Count map has added a new piece of information on the left-hand panel. You can now see what the percentage response rate was when NRFU began operations on August 9th. And then you can see what the increase has been since that date. You're also able to see the response rate to date, and then what that looked like for, in this case, Texas in 2010. So you can see that we are still behind on our 2010 response rate from 2010. Next slide, please. And then here, just wanted to share with you again, on our dashboard, we've added that second tab for self-response rate 2010 and 2020, where you can see each individual census tract, and it'll tell you how many households are in that census tract, how many have responded, and then how many more would be needed to reach the 2010 milestone. And so, for instance, in this case, this is a census tract in the Houston area. They are about 23.6% points below their 2010 rate. So there is a lot of work to be done in this census tract. But if we could get 289 households, we would be able to reach that milestone in this census tract. All of the ones in green, of course, have met that milestone. And then the shade of the area, the census tract, lets you know how far away they are from that 2010 milestone. Next slide, please. Then over the last couple of weeks, we took a look at the bottom 20% of counties in terms of response rates. And so, as I mentioned earlier, Texas has 254 counties. About 51 of them have counties that fall in the bottom 20%. The response rates for these counties in the bottom 20% can range from 37.7% to as low as 14.9%. And this is all at the county level. 41% of these counties have populations that are at least 50% Hispanic or more. And then 59% of these counties have 50% or more of their housing units in the update leave universe. 20% of the bottom 20% counties are both majority Hispanic as well as majority update leave universe. And so that means that what's really challenging in these particular harder to count, lower response census tracts is the harder to count characteristics that are sticking out for us in terms of this analysis are the high percentage of Hispanics as well as the high rate of update leave. And so here you can see the bottom 10 counties in terms of response rate across the state. And it's Edwards, includes Edwards, Kennedy, Real, Loving, Hudspeth, McMullen, Zapata, Kinney, Culberson, and Presidio. Many of these counties are counties that are in South Texas or along the border and in more rural parts of the state. So you can see the percent Hispanic there as well, and then the percent update leave. So you can see that some of the, or at least the bottom 10 counties in terms of response rate include, one of those challenges. It's either an update leave area or it's an area that has a high share of Hispanics in that population. Next slide, please. We also took a similar look at the census tract level. And so at the county level, we saw that update leave was a significant issue for response rate. When we looked at the census tracts, update leave is still a significant challenge, but it's a lower percentage challenge in terms of census tracts. So we have over almost 6,800 census tracts in the entire state of Texas, and 1,346 of these have response rate that are in the bottom 20%. The response rates can range from 46.7% to as low as 3.2%.
Lila, I think your connection might be a little off.
More than in terms of the comparison between the census and of their populations as Hispanic. And then I'm getting a note here that can you still hear me, Katie?
You were going out a little bit. I can hear you right now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I apologize for that. But we have more than 2.3 million Latinos that reside in these census tracts. And then, like as I mentioned before, update leave is a significant challenge in many of these low response census tracts, but it's a smaller share. And so, at the county level, sometimes one census tract in a rural area can make up the entire county. But then in much more urbanized parts of the state, we have many more counties and very few of them have update leave universes. And so we can see that it's a much smaller share of the bottom 20% census tract with low response rates that have the update leave challenge. But what we are seeing is that really we need to increase our response rates in a lot of these Hispanic majority census tracts. And I think that's all I have for this analysis, Katie, unless there are any questions.
think we have one question from Bertha. She's asking, in these lowest response areas, how many households does this account for?
Yes, so it's gonna vary, right, by census tract. Get a sense. So we have about 11 million Latinos living in the state of Texas right now, but 2.3 million of them live in these bottom 20% response census tracts. I can get the number of households that would be, but I don't have that right off the top of my head here.
Thanks, Lila.
Sure.
Lots of really, really great information. And of course, if anyone does have any questions, comments, concerns, pop them into the chat box. But lots of great stuff. Thank you so much, Lila, for sharing.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'll add, Katie, is that those, when I looked at the very bottom, response rate census tracts, most of them were in South Texas or in the Corpus area. So Nueces County had a lot of these census tracts, as well as one was the lowest one was actually McClellan County. And I believe that that census tract may have a group quarters in it that may not be reflected in that response rate. But most of those lower response rate census tracts were in South Texas.
Thank you, Lila. Mirna shares, just 2 or 3 weeks ago, our local census rep shared that 1% for our city, which is Brownsville, it was equal to 516 households. This information was really surprising to her and made her realize that they needed to rethink strategies in terms of their outreach efforts. Thank you so much, Mirna, for sharing that. And again, that is very surprising to hear that just 1% of household, or 1% equals 516 households. That's a lot. Great. Well, we will move on to our Get Out the Count efforts now. The first thing that I wanted to start off with was just to give folks kind of an idea of what Texas Counts is thinking in terms of our final push. We know we have about 7-ish weeks left to get out the count in our state. And so we want to make sure that, one, we're supporting you all and getting out the count, and two, just trying to do as much good as we can put out there in these remaining weeks. So the first thing that we are planning on doing is, of course, a really robust final push social media campaign. And so what exactly do I mean by that? So last time that we met, I shared a bunch of new graphics. Do you know that we are planning on creating new content weekly? In terms of helping you guys promote the census on social media. So there always is going to be new graphics and images and messaging that you'll be able to access via the toolkit. And then, of course, if you're joining us for one of these weekly update sessions, we'll make sure to put those before you too. But again, with these graphics, we're going to make them fun. We're going to make them creative. We want to make sure that we're reaching as many folks as we can. If you have any ideas or inspiration or things that you're looking forward to in terms of graphics, let us know. We're happy to create those. I know at one point we had folks requesting graphics around people responding to the census via their smartphones, and that was a really quick thing for us to put together and share out with everyone. So again, even on the call right now, if there's any graphic requests, just pop them in the chat box. We'll write those down and we'll try and get those to you as soon as possible. In addition to having this weekly content, it's also going to be themed. So for example, the newest graphics for this week are around the NRFU operation. So door knocking, what that looks like in the state of Texas. And each week following, we'll have a theme around what type of content we're sharing. So look out for that. We'll, of course, be promoting it on our socials as well as our newsletter. In addition to that, we are also wanting to continue this weekly connection piece. We know that the Texas Counts weekly update is not really a weekly update anymore. It's a bi-weekly update. We meet every other week. So with that in mind, we wanted to offer a couple of other ways that we can connect on a weekly basis. So of course, we're going to continue doing our Texas Counts weekly update calls. But on the alternating Mondays, still at 12 p.m. Central, we're going to be doing Texas Counts town halls. And this is going to look really different than our weekly update calls. Yes, of course, if there's any new information that we want to share out or need to share out, we'll share these on these calls. But these are just going to be a place of connection amongst people trying to get out the count in the state of Texas. And so instead of like a traditional webinar, which we're all sitting on right now, this is your opportunity to connect with census champions across the state of Texas to, again, share out some of the challenges you're experiencing, some of the best practices that have been working in your community. And we'll also have a call to action. And one of our goals of these town halls is, in addition to providing a space for y'all to connect, we also want to focus on an undercounted community or a hard to count community that is traditionally counted during the enumeration, the door knocking operation. And so we'll just be sharing out some insights around that and having some guest speakers. So again, we are going to be starting these on next Monday, so a week from today, and they'll be on the alternate days of our census update. So more information on those coming soon, and hope that you can join us. In addition to that, another new thing that we'll be doing are Texas Counts Power Hours, where I believe we'll plan to start doing these next week. And these are just an opportunity for folks who might not necessarily be able to lead get out the count efforts in their communities, or are just trying to find time in their schedule to really promote the 2020 census. And so the idea around these is we'll do a quick Census Champion Census 101 crash course for the first 10 or 15 minutes. And then the remainder of the hour is going to be used specifically for outreach efforts. So if you have community members or folks that are wanting to promote the 2020 census, but don't exactly know where to get started or don't have the means to be trained and equipped to start spreading the good word about the census, these are going to be hopefully fun opportunities for folks to, one, get a better understanding of what the census is, what it looks like, but also actually do some real-time outreach during that hour. So again, more on that to come very soon. And then our newsletter is continuing to go out. Again, we try and pull all of the most relevant information for you all, and graphics and resources and information. So that's going to continue. So don't worry, it's not going away. And then the last thing that we are focusing on in terms of Texas Counts is Dr. Valencia walked through the data around some of our counties that are in the lowest 20% areas, obviously virtually, of course. So do know that we are planning some strategies in those specific counties and regions. And so if you are in those spaces, know that I might be, or not even might be, I will be connecting with you very soon to start brainstorming what are some ideas around a big final push for those counties. So lots of exciting things happening. Again, we want to try and have as strong as a final push as we can, knowing that our work will be ending soon. But again, if you have any suggestions, ideas, if you need any support, whether it's around graphics or leading events, please let us know. We are always here to help. And with that, I did want to share out some of the graphics that we have. Some of these we shared 2 weeks ago. Some of them are going to be new. So again, we know that the enumerators are in our communities. They're knocking on doors. So these are just two graphics that you can share out. These are new for this week, which I think are pretty fun. They're, as you can see, very comic book themed around the enumeration, the non-response follow-up visits that are happening right now. So again, these are in the toolkit. And so when you go to the toolkit, you'll be able to download these images for wherever you're posting it. And then there's also just a sample post that you can share along with that as well. We have 4 new graphics related to this. And so again, just thinking about when folks are coming to your door, what to expect. For example, if there's a knock from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., who is that? People aren't really doing that in our communities right now. And so just again, reminding folks that it's the census taker. In addition to that, again, as Genesis shared, the census Census Bureau is sending out emails, and so we have these cute little Census Bureau email alerts. We'll be translating these into Spanish as well. We're working on that right now, just so you can ensure that you can share out with more communities. In addition to this, I could have jumped the gun a little bit, but I have heard that the Census Bureau is going to be potentially sending text messages out as well. So if that actually ends up happening, we have graphics ready to go for you to alert our communities that the Census Bureau is sending out text messages as well as phone calls. And as Genesis shared in the beginning, a family friend received a phone call from the Census Bureau just to clarify some things on the form. And so again, the Census Bureau is making phone calls, and this is a graphic that can be shared out as well. And then responding to the 2020 census by using your smartphone. And then the last thing that I did want to share out today is, let me see if, I'm seeing if Jamie's on. My fabulous intern, Jamie, wants to share out a little bit more about this deadline that is coming up, I believe, this week. So, hey, Jamie. You should be unmuted.
Yes. Hi, Katie. Hi, everyone. I just wanted to share that the deadline for the PEBT is this Friday, August 21st. And just a short summary of it, the PEBT card is for families that have children that qualify for free and reduced lunch, and they'll receive a card that is similar to a SNAP card for approximately $285, I believe. And we just want to make sure that all of the children and families that you work with know about this benefit, because the vast majority are eligible, including kinship families, foster children, and kids attending charter schools. And we also want families to know that immigration status does not matter when applying for PEBT, and that public charge rule does not apply. And especially right now, when food security is at a record high in Texas, PEBT is a great way to help support families. And we're just here to encourage everyone to take advantage of this program and to really push for everyone that is eligible to apply. And so thank you.
Thank you so much, Jamie. And again, I know this is a little bit out of the census world, but we want to make sure that our families are getting access to the food that they need. And so we have these graphics in English and Spanish as well. And so please feel free to share those out with your communities to make sure that they are getting those benefits that they deserve. Besides that, I wanted to also share that all of these graphics that we shared out with you all today live in the Texas Counts Toolkit. And so if you go to texascounts.org, well, I guess the link is right there for you with the virtual road trip. If you just click on this little box right here, it will take you back to that toolkit that we had for the road trip. So again, lots of really great graphics beyond what we shared today. Some of them are regional specific too. And so again, we'll keep creating content. Let us know what type of content you're looking for, and we're happy to create that for you. And then just as a reminder, again, we are going to be starting our Texas Counts Town Hall meetings next Monday. We're going to be having 3 of these. And so the link to RSVP for that is there. And again, this is more of a connection discussion versus a webinar. Of course, we'll be sharing out the most recent information that we have, but we really just wanted to offer folks a space to connect virtually, so people in East Texas can make sure they're connecting with our friends out in West Texas. So I hope you'll join us. More information on that will be in the follow-up email from this webinar. And then, of course, our Texas Counts weekly update. I was looking at the calendar to see how many more of these we had left. And after today, it's going to be about 4. You'll notice I do have one in October, which will be after the deadline. And I think we're going to plan on having that one as kind of a recap, reflection, and thank you. But we only have 4 of these left. Again, thank you so much, of course, to my co-presenters for bringing y'all such wonderful content every other week. And then, of course, to you, our attendees, for tuning in and sharing out about the importance of the census. And with that, I'm going to pause to see if we do have any questions. Bertha confirmed that the text messages have been confirmed by the Bureau, which is great news. So that means that those graphics are good and ready for you all to use. And And then I think maybe there was some questions in the Q&A box potentially that I think maybe either Lila or Genesis fielded.
Sure. The question is, can you share the page that shows the proper ID for those knocking at the doors? And yes, we can definitely share the ID. It's a pretty simple, straightforward ID. So yeah, we'll make sure to share that with the slides in the recording as well.
Yeah, and the other two questions that we got, Katie, so I guess just to review for anyone who's not familiar, update leave are those areas of the country that are more sparsely populated. They tend to be less connected to technology, and they tend to receive mail, not at their regular household, but perhaps at a PO box or some other mail center. And so there is no connection that the Census Bureau can send an invitation to them at their housing unit. And so instead what they do is they hand deliver a packet to these housing units with information on the census and then the actual paper questionnaire. That operation, as you'll recall, was suspended for a while because of COVID restrictions, but it has wrapped up, and all of those packets have been delivered to the Update Leave universe. And then there was a question relating to that, whether or not NRFU, non-response follow-up, would take place or occur in Update Leave areas. And yes, the non-response follow-up is the operation for all housing units that the Census Bureau has in their master address file, including those that are in the Update Leave universe. They will go and follow up at all of these housing units that have yet to respond.
Thank you, Lila. And I see a comment on Facebook that there's an issue with the graphics when you're trying to share those. Let us do our research to see if we can get that fixed for you. Sorry that you've been having issues with those. And I think that might be all of our questions today. So again, we'll hang around for another 30 seconds or so if anyone does have any questions, comments, or concerns. But with that, I do, again, just want to say a big thank you to everyone for joining us. All of the links and information that was shared today will be in the follow-up email, and we'll make sure that we get that to you all ASAP. But with that, I'll pause to see if we have any remaining questions, and if not, we'll go ahead and close out this week's update. Cool. Well, thanks again, everybody, for joining us. All of our emails are on this slide, so if you ever need anything, feel free to reach out to us at any time. We are always happy to help and support your efforts. Stay safe out there. Let's continue making sure that Texans are counted in the 2020 census. Thanks, everybody. Have a wonderful week.